Hey everyone, welcome back to Crafting with Cora. I know it's been a while and I've taken up quite a few new crafts since then, but I'm going to start off with some cross stitching. So I started about 2 years ago, so the perspective of my videos will be more of a newbie perspective. When I started off, I couldn't find all the information I was looking for. There was too much information, so I'm going to break it down into small little chunks so it's easier to follow when you're starting off. So the best thing that I recommend if you're going to start off cross stitching, honestly, is just go for it. I had seen for years some family members doing it, absolutely loved the outcome, and I was like, I can't possibly do that. I looked at videos, I thought it was even more confusing. So I just kind of abandoned the idea. And then right before I gave birth to my daughter, I decided to take the jump and figured I'd had maternity leave to figure it out. Turns out it wasn't really that complicated. So when I first started, I bought a little kit. So this is one of the older ones, and it's a counted cross stitch kit. So there's two different kinds of kits that you can purchase. You can have the counted, which is, you can see on the fabric here, which is more of a plastic fabric, that there's no pattern. And then you can get some that have the pattern printed on. So it's preference which one you want to do. I prefer the counted. I've done the stamped and I found that sometimes the colors didn't align with where they needed to go. A lot of people like them if they have a hard time focusing or counting. The colors are on there and you just follow kind of along. You don't have to look at the paper pattern or on the application before you stitch. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up this little package and show you what comes in a kit normally. So depending where you buy your kit from, it comes with a variety of things, but it will almost always include the thread you need, naturally the pattern. So in this one here, you also have the colors that you're going to require. So these are the color codes for this Cora-lyne company. The majority of kinds of thread are DMC. So you'll see a lot of patterns, they'll have the DMC color or they'll have a conversion chart online if you're not sure. My recommendation, if you're a beginner, try to find patterns that have colors that match the DMC or that say they use DMC. That way if you run out of a color, you can go to your local Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Walmart even carries them, and you'll be able to pick them up from there. So you always get the gridded pattern like this. It'll even give you, depending how beginner of a chart it is, some instructions on how to cross stitch. This one here is actually plastic canvas, so it's a little bit more solid. It doesn't flop over like fabric. And generally it'll include a needle. What I discovered when I started cross stitching is that there is a lot of gadgets and doodads that you can purchase for everything in cross stitching, kind of like any other craft. What I did is I bought a kit, I started, and as I grew over the last 2 years, I've picked out the things I prefer, the things that I like less. I've tried out different things. If you have any friends that cross stitch, or if you join online any communities, sometimes in your own city they have little cross stitch clubs. You can try different things. You can talk to people online and say, okay, well, my hands hurt. I have a hard time holding the hoop, which is what you'll put your fabric in. So sometimes this is a little bit thin for someone who has any issues with their hands. So they'll prefer something like a nurge or even as wide as the Q-snap. Now don't be afraid by all the sizes. I've been working on bigger projects now, which at first I thought I would never do. I didn't have the patience. I didn't want to wait for them to be done, but they're actually really fun. And honestly, they're not that much more complicated. Once you figure out how to cross stitch, which is essentially just doing X's on your fabric, you can take on a good portion of projects that are out there. So when you're going to start, quite often there is a line indicating the middle, and I always work from the middle out. Sometimes a pattern will call for you to start from the top. Those even now I'm a little bit iffy on, but it all comes with practice, right? And if you're not sure, always look online. There's tons of people asking the same questions that you're looking to answer. And that's going to be another one of my videos, is how to start in the middle and then how to start on top, on the bottom, on the side, whichever way that you decide you want to do. So I'm going to be sharing kind of a little bit of my cross-stitch adventure over the last 2 years, the things I've learned, the gadgets I've used, things I prefer, how patterns come about. So you get them in kits like this. You can buy books that kind of have different patterns. So I'm a big Hocus Pocus fan. So I bought a book that has a variety of patterns. I was gifted a book the other day that had Disney princesses. You can buy them on almost anything. The only thing I recommend, really, my number one kind of thing, I started with paper patterns, love them, never thought I could use the application to stitch, and now I can't go without it. So it's definitely something to check out. But when you're beginning, a small kit like the Winnie the Pooh that I just showed you is your best way to start. Everything's all included. You don't have to start calculating your fabric. You don't have to start calculating your thread. You just kind of can go and start from there. So in another video, I'm going to talk about the vocabulary. So like kind of what is this? It's called floss. It comes in a skein, which I have here, like this. And then how to store them. How do you store them for projects? What are the different ways to hold your project? So I showed you a hoop already, the Nurge, the Q-snap. There's even stands. So I don't want to overwhelm you with the first video. I just kind of want to show you what comes in a kit. So for this one, since it is plastic canvas, it doesn't need a hoop. You hold it like this, you stitch on it, and that's it. Projects that use fabric, like these will need you can stitch in hand. Which is exactly doing the same thing as with the plastic. You hold it in your hand and you cross stitch. The only number one tip, honestly, is to be consistent. So if you're going to stitch in hand, try to stitch in hand the whole way. If you're going to use a hoop or some kind of device to hold it, use that. When you're stitching in hand, you don't have the same tension as when you're holding it in a hoop and or other. So your stitches might not be as tight or as loose, which will give it kind of an uneven feeling. But as you can see, this is a lot floppier. So my preference is to put it in something. I've discovered that Q-snaps are my new favorite thing, but most kits will start you off with a hoop, and a lot of people still prefer using hoops. Depending on which project I'm working on, like this small one, my little Hocus Pocus here. See this hoop? I use this hoop for it. It's perfect. You hold it in hand. It's just a tiny project, as opposed to this one here, where I have a bigger surface. I prefer having the bigger one, and then I can work like on these two squares at the same time without having to move my Nurge here. One of my least favorite things is moving it. And you'll talk to a lot of stitchers, they'll tell you the same thing. So just moving it is just a pain. You have to take out all your little clippies, gotta take it all apart, put it back in. It's just a daunting task. It doesn't take an eternity, but if you're in the stitching mood, you just want to keep stitching. You don't want to keep moving your project around. So that's that for my first video. I will explain in the next videos kind of some of the accessories that we're using. I will also explain the different, I'll call them contraptions to hold, how I store my floss for each project, how I store them once they're off of this thing and I have kind of pieces everywhere. What do I do with them? Or if they come like this, well, you untie it, but then what do? Some of them might get taken. If you have animals, they might play with it, and or kids. So there's different things that you can do to store them to make sure that it doesn't get tangled or it doesn't get lost, and then you don't have enough to finish your project. So see you next time. Thanks for coming to Crafting with Cora.